Section 1. The Hook. How do you lose track of 478 buildings? Not blueprints, not plans. Actual physical buildings, structures that exist in the real world, that you can walk into, that cost taxpayer money to build. And 39 Black Hawk helicopters? Not destroyed in combat, not decommissioned, just gone, missing from the ledger, somewhere out there, belonging to the most powerful military on the planet. At the Pentagon, this is not a crisis. This is Tuesday. This building has a budget larger than most countries' entire economies. It employs more people than live in many major cities. It commands armies, navies, air forces, and space operations across every continent on Earth. And it has never, not once, passed a financial audit. Today, we go inside the House of Power. Section 2. Born in a Swamp. The year was 1941. Europe was burning, and President Roosevelt knew, sooner or later, America would enter the war. The War Department had spread itself across 15 different buildings in Washington. Something had to change. An architect named George Bergstrom was handed an almost impossible task: design the world's largest office building, and do it in 2 days. His solution was born from the shape of the plot he'd been given, irregular, five-sided. And so, the Pentagon was born. There was one problem: the site was mostly swampland. Engineers had to drive 41,000 concrete pilings deep into the earth just to create a stable foundation. They dredged 680,000 tons of sand directly from the Potomac River. Construction began on September 11th, 1941, a date that would echo across history exactly 60 years later. 16 months after breaking ground, in January 1943, it was complete. Workers had poured enough concrete to build a sidewalk from New York City to Miami. The result was staggering. 17.5 miles of corridors, 6.5 million square feet of floor space. And yet, thanks to its radial design, you can walk between any 2 points in the entire building in under 10 minutes. At the center, a 5-acre open-air courtyard. During the Cold War, Soviet spy satellites reportedly photographed this courtyard obsessively, in particular a small hot dog kiosk at its heart. Soviet analysts allegedly believed it was the entrance to an underground nuclear command bunker. They nicknamed the hot dog stand Ground Zero. One more detail that history forgot. The Pentagon was built under Virginia's racial segregation laws, so it was designed with double the number of restrooms actually required by law. Section 3. How it actually works. Most people assume the Pentagon is simply where generals plan wars. The reality is far more structured and far more interesting. The Pentagon is the headquarters of the United States Department of Defense. At the top sits the Secretary of Defense, a civilian, not a general, a civilian appointed by the President, confirmed by the Senate. This is deliberate. The principle is called civilian control. The Founding Fathers watched European monarchies collapse under the weight of unchecked military power. They built into the Constitution an explicit requirement that elected civilians, not generals, hold final authority over military decisions. The Secretary of Defense is second in the military chain of command only to the President himself. Below the Secretary sits the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the senior uniformed officers representing every branch: Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, Space Force, and the Coast Guard. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs is the highest-ranking military officer in the country. Here is what most people get wrong. The Joint Chiefs do not command troops. They advise. Actual operational command flows directly from the President through the Secretary of Defense to the combatant commanders, the generals and admirals who run real operations in specific regions of the world. And somewhere in a small, secretive office inside the Pentagon sits the Office of Net Assessment. Its former director, Andrew Marshall, held the position for 42 years, serving every president from Nixon to Obama. His office did not plan the next war, it planned the war 20 years from now. He was perhaps the most quietly influential man in Washington, Almost nobody outside the defense world has ever heard his name. Section 4. The Money Machine. Now let's talk about the budget, because the numbers here stop being numbers and start becoming something closer to performance art. The official US defense budget sits at approximately $886 billion annually. That is more than the next 10 countries on Earth combined spend on their militaries. It is larger than the Netherlands' GDP. It comes to roughly $2.4 billion per day. $93.4 billion spent in September 2025 alone. In a single month, $855 billion plus real spending when VA, DHS, and black budgets are included. But here is the mechanism behind the madness. Federal budgeting law contains a rule called use it or lose it. If a department doesn't spend its full annual budget, Congress reduces its allocation the following year. So every September, the final month of the fiscal year, the Pentagon rushes to spend whatever remains. In September 2025, they spent $93.4 billion in 30 days, the highest single month figure recorded since at least 2008. On what? Among other things, $5.3 million in Apple devices, $225 million in furniture, $60,000 recliners, and millions on Lobster and Ribeye steak. This is not corruption in the traditional sense. It is the entirely predictable result of a broken incentive structure, one that has existed for decades, that everyone in Washington knows about, and that nobody has managed to fix. Section 5. The Accounting Black Hole. In 1990, Congress passed a law requiring every federal agency to submit to annual financial audits, standard practice for any organization handling public money. The Pentagon attempted its first full audit in 2018. It failed. It has failed every audit since. It is the only major federal agency that has never, in over 3 decades, produced a clean set of accounts. Why? Because the accounting systems are a Gordian knot of incompatible legacy software, some of it running on COBOL, a programming language developed in 1959, the year Hawaii became a state, the year Alaska was admitted to the Union. The Pentagon is running its finances on software older than the internet, older than the fax machine, older than the photocopier. The numbers reveal the scale of the problem. In 2015 alone, the US Army generated $6.5 trillion in accounting adjustments, known internally as plugs, fictional numbers inserted into spreadsheets to make mismatched accounts appear to balance. That figure is 54 times the Army's actual annual budget. The Pentagon currently cannot sufficiently document 63% of its nearly $4 trillion in assets. Also in 2015, the Pentagon reportedly buried its own internal study identifying $125 billion in administrative waste, suppressing the findings to prevent potential budget cuts. The story was eventually broken by the Washington Post. And those 478 missing buildings, those 39 Black Hawk helicopters from the opening of this video, this is where they went, not stolen, not destroyed, simply lost in the machine. Former Pentagon officials have acknowledged the department has become, in their own words, desensitized to this kind of financial disorder. When trillions of dollars move through a system this complex, individual discrepancies stop feeling like emergencies. They become background noise. Section 6. The Shrinking Edge. While the Pentagon has been consumed by its internal bureaucracy, the world outside has not been standing still. 2 decades of sustained Chinese investment have largely negated the American military advantage in the Western Pacific. China now operates the world's largest navy by vessel count. A single Chinese shipyard today has more production capacity than all US shipyards combined. And modern warfare is changing the economics of military power in ways the Pentagon is struggling to adapt to. Here is the problem in one sentence. The US military is currently shooting down $35,000 kamikaze drones using missiles that cost $4 million each. That is a 114-to-1 cost ratio, and the adversary gets to choose when to make that trade. The Pentagon's response has been to pursue what strategists call exquisite systems, extraordinarily capable but extraordinarily expensive platforms. Aircraft carriers, stealth fighters, next-generation submarines. These are technological masterpieces. They are also vanishingly few in number. Meanwhile, a new generation of cheap, mass-produced, AI-guided weapons is reshaping what the battlefield actually looks like. And the Pentagon's procurement system, designed for a different era, is only slowly catching up. There is a further problem that no weapon system can solve. Only 23% of Americans currently meet the minimum educational, medical, and physical requirements to serve in the military. The pool of eligible recruits is shrinking. Enlistment interest is declining. The world's most powerful military is facing a human resources crisis. Section 7. The pizza theory. The detail that sounds like a conspiracy theory, but is in fact a recognized principle of modern intelligence analysis. During the Gulf War build-up in 1990, analysts monitoring activity around the Pentagon noticed something unusual. Pizza deliveries spiked dramatically in the middle of the night. The logic once stated is obvious. When major military operations are being planned, personnel work through the night. They cannot leave the building, they order food, and delivery drivers, unknowingly, become a real-time signal of elevated activity inside one of the world's most classified facilities. This principle, using mundane commercial activity as a proxy for classified government behavior, is now a pillar of open source intelligence, or OSINT. Analysts today monitor satellite images of parking lots, airline reservation patterns, shipping manifests and social media posts near military installations to reconstruct what governments are doing without ever accessing a single classified document. It has never been more relevant. In October 2025, the Pentagon moved to restrict press access entirely, requiring reporters to cover only pre-approved news. Almost every major news outlet forfeited their credentials in protest rather than comply. When an institution this powerful controls information this tightly, reading the signals hiding in plain sight becomes the only window left. The most powerful building on Earth still leaks through pizza boxes, parking lots, and patterns in the ordinary world. Section 8. Closing. The Pentagon is more than a building. It is a physical manifestation of a specific idea, that a democratic republic can maintain the world's most powerful military while keeping it under civilian control, accountable to the people it serves. Whether that idea is succeeding, whether $93 billion, September spending sprees, unauditable trillions, and missing Black Hawk helicopters represent a system working as designed or a system quietly coming apart, is a debate that scholars, generals, and citizens have been having for 80 years. What is not debatable? The decisions made inside that five-sided building on the banks of the Potomac will determine the shape of the next decade. Every alliance, every arms sale, every drone launched, every satellite positioned, every war prevented, and every war started. 26,000 people, 17.5 miles of corridors, 478 buildings they can't find. And somewhere inside tonight, someone is probably ordering pizza. If you want to understand who is building the rival to everything you just saw, the institution on the other side of the world that is studying the Pentagon's weaknesses, while the Pentagon is struggling to balance its own books, that video is coming soon.